All right, now we started recording. Just want to let everyone know that Alicia won't be joining us today. She is working on some stuff, so we'll just dive in. We're gonna start off with Tanner. He is going to present and go over scoreboard stuff in the agate. So I'll just turn it over to Tanner.
Okay, let's see here. Having a little bit of trouble with InDesign at the moment. Hopefully that can get squared away soon. Kind of bad time to have InDesign issues, but yeah, while that's recovering, we're going to be going over national scoreboard stuff. So that will be, your basic pro leagues and major college leagues. That'd be NFL, NBA, MLB, MLS, all these other stuff like NCAA, Big Ten primarily. So let's see if I can present here. The window. So hopefully this is working. Is everything working correctly?
Yep, we can see.
All right. So I'll start off at the top here with the NFL. That season is over currently, but it should be starting back up again sometime around late August or September. And it's usually like pretty straightforward with how this is flowed in. Oh, by the way, I'm not sure if this will be included in the email on the recording, but you'll have to grab these from a folder that has all the Reuters national agate. So I think that will be included in the email as well. Anyway, so yeah, this should be pretty straightforward. It has the NFL glance here with standings and score and times and all that. The one thing that people have to look out for is with box scores, primarily with some teams like the Los Angeles Chargers, the LA Rams, the New York Jets, and the New York Giants. Because what Reuters will do is they'll pull it in as Los Angeles. Well, we don't know which Los Angeles team that is. We're looking at the schedule right away. So what we'll need to do is we'll need to change this, like, ignore New Orleans. This is going to be New York for now. So it'll be like NY, N.Y. Giants or Jets, whichever one. And then this one looks like it's the LA Chargers. So L.A. Chargers. And the next thing will be to fix this score line. So the command you want to do for most of this stuff will be Control-Shift-T. That will bring up your tabs. And you'll see these arrows right here, which will be the right justified tabs, will be the ones that we primarily use, if not only use, for the national scoreboard. So you just want to make sure you want to get everything lined up nice and neat and look kind of good for the most part. And this one looks like it's an overtime score line, which I did not notice right away when I pulled it in. So that's actually a good example. Some games will go into overtime and they'll have like an additional like quarter or score line here. So you just want to make sure you want to space that out a little bit more evenly than the others. And since it's an overtime, we'll just put OT. Some box scores will have that OT right away, but they'll say like one OT on some of them, especially in the NHL. You can just go ahead and get rid of that one because there's no other overtime period during the regular season anyway. You might have some overtime periods in the playoffs, but not during the regular season. But with the NFL, I think it's only like one overtime period anyway, unless it's the playoffs. And this part, the team statistics. This is the one that's the biggest issue with the NFL. So with this, you want to try and space this out evenly as much as possible. And you won't have this many like tabs when you pull in the box scores to begin with. You just want to make sure it's like spaced out like this. And with this, you'll just want to hit tab once, and then everything will be lined up pretty good. And then over on the college side for the Big Ten, it's kind of the same thing with this, where you just want to use the tabs to justify all these. But we will only run the conference all PF and PA, which is for conference records, all records, or overall record, points for and points against. We don't care about the recent results. That doesn't need to be on here. So let's just go ahead and use tabs and make sure it's all evenly spaced out. Let's see if I can get this on here. There we go. And then you just want to get rid of all these like different idols and whatnot. And we'll center that West Division on here as well. And a good time saver, so you don't have to like manually line up all these at once, is use this eyedropper tool, which will be, I believe, Control I. No, just I. So that's a good shortcut to have if you need like to save some sort of time. And the same thing with the college boxes here. They used to capitalize these in like all caps, like it would be Minnesota and Nebraska in all caps, but they don't do that anymore, it looks like. And with the FBS and FCS college scores, they already know it's under football. The reader already knows that, so we can just say Saturday's FBS scores. Over on to baseball, MLB. This is usually flowed in as it is. This should be fine. I don't think there's any other issues. Don't grab the extended glance, just grab the regular glance for that. AL leaders and NL leaders, those are usually pulled in as AL top 10 and NL top 10. And the box scores are usually okay as well. So there's not a lot to do for the MLB, but sometimes you'll have like the long names that tend to put this on another line here, like Gold. One, for example, Gold Schmidt. Like sometimes there'll be like really, really long names, so you could just get rid of some of the vowels to get it on here. And if you've already eliminated all of your available vowels, you can just get rid of some consonants that still make sense. So right there, that's a good example of that. Any questions so far on NFL or MLB? Okay, moving on. Basketball, NBA. This is pulled in usually as is. The only problem with the glance is that Writers likes to have some like weird central glitch there. Get rid of that. It's kind of unnecessary. Let's see. The box scores for NBA, they have bolded score lines. We want to unbold those. This is another example of an overtime game. So we can just go ahead and let's see. Use the eyedropper tool on that. And eyedropper is not always going to be like a cure-all thing. So we can go ahead and just add another justified tab. And then just kind of line everything up nice and evenly spaced. And on usually you'll see like attendance not available on like prelim boxes. Before the pandemic, that's what was on those prelim boxes. So when everything gets back to normal, they should have like attendances here and like 14,000 or whatever it is. So if it's NA, just get rid of it, especially now because we know that there's not any attendance available in most of these things. WNBA, these are coming up here pretty soon. This is a WNBA box, or WNBA glance, excuse me, pulled in as it is. You can go ahead and get rid of this one because we already have it labeled as WNBA. We can also get rid of at a glance. Center these, Eastern Conference and Western Conference, and that should be okay. The score lines for WNBA are a little weird. You just want to use either an eyedropper tool or use a Control-Shift-T to fix those tabs and get them all spaced out evenly. And again, we can get rid of the any attendance. Let's see. NCAA, that season's rounding out here pretty soon. But this is what it's usually pulled in as. So we just want to use our Control-Shift-T to space out the wins, loss, and percentages within the conference and the overall, which will be labeled as all games. And with all games, it has a tab here instead of a space, so we can just get rid of the tab and then use a space there and then use this to get all the labels labeled correctly. And since we use both men's and women's glances, oh yeah, and that's another thing. The difference between the men's and women's glances is that the label for their conference, the Big Ten Conference, is on all caps, and the men's is not in all caps. That and the schedule is normal, where it's all bolded for the women's one. So that's just going to have to be modified modified manually, excuse me. Friday's games, there's none. And unbold that. Another thing with the score lines, which we'll want to pull in that as, well, they're in Reuters, they're labeled as WNCAA-B and NCAA-B scores. There's a long version and a short version. You'll usually want to grab the short version because that'll have all those scores available to you right away. And the long one has the entire schedule for that slate of games for that day. Unless you're monitoring every single NCAA game, I don't recommend pulling the long file. But sometimes you'll wonder, like, is there going to be an update here in the next half hour or so? And you'll just want to pull in that long file, and it'll tell you how many games are remaining in that day. But other than that, we can just use the eyedropper tool on the glance here and copy it as is. And using the eyedropper tool, it'll like make sure like everything is kind of uniform. So this part is unbolded if you use the eyedropper tool. I see this happen more with the NHL glance, which I'll get to here in just a bit. So I'll just go ahead and bold that. Click off and click on. Oh, I see what the problem is. There we go. So that looks all nice and neat now. And one last thing with college basketball. It did say women's here, so we can just go ahead and get rid of, down here it says that. Go ahead and get rid of the women's college basketball because we already have the label head for that on women and men. If anybody has any questions, just feel free to interrupt me at any point, whether in chat or through the microphone. Going on to NHL here real quick. The divisions for this season are changed. They should be back to normal. next season, back in October, I should say. But right now, we'll just go ahead and add another tab here and just get everything spaced out evenly. There's a lot to space out in this glance because there's games played, wins, loss, overtime loss, shootout loss, points, goals for, and goals against. If you're going to manually edit this, I recommend knowing the rules for that for the NHL, which is a little bit complicated because teams get a point if they lose in overtime or lose in a shootout, but they get 2 points if they win no matter what. And I've seen some instances of the eyedropper tool being used here where sometimes this gets all unbolded. And like sometimes the division will be like right up against there, and you won't have like much of a label head for these divisions. The eyedropper tool is a good way to make sure this is all nice and uniform, but just be careful on having these be left justified. You want to center these and just go ahead and bold them again. Bold, and bold. And another thing with the NHL is, and I should also mention this for the NBA and WNBA as well, we only want to pull in regional teams. So that'd be like Minnesota Timberwolves, Minnesota Wild, Winnipeg Jets, Minnesota Lynx. I believe those are the only ones for NBA and WNBA and the NHL. Otherwise, for MLB, we're going to try to pull in every single box score that we possibly can. Same thing with the NFL on Sundays. But otherwise, we only want the regional teams like Minnesota and Winnipeg. With the MLS, it's the same thing. We only want the Minnesota United FC box. And this should be straightforward with this. This was recently changed within Reuters because sometimes they would have the entire team's name listed. We didn't want that. But they do miss the Portland Timbers on here, so we just want to go ahead and change that to Portland. And the reason for that being is because sometimes like the names on there have like the nicknames of the teams, and otherwise they'll just say like FC or SC. Keep the FC and SC, but you don't want the nicknames on there for the most part, unless it's LA, because LA has 2 sports teams, as well as New York. So NY Red Bulls, NYCFC, and then LA Galaxy and Los Angeles FC. And on the score lines, you just want to get rid of the nicknames as well. So like Revolution, Fire, Union, Impact, Whitecaps. So it'll say Vancouver FC instead of Vancouver Whitecaps FC. Houston Dynamo, just Houston. And with Sporting Kansas City, you can either say Sporting Kansas City or Sporting KC. The readers will understand which team that's going to be. Colorado Rapids is gone. You get the idea. And with this, sometimes the soccer box scores will be a little bit funky. So it'll have like a home team and then the away team instead of like winner and then the losing score. So we'll switch that up. Houston Dynamo 3, comma, Minnesota United FC 0. And if it's going on to a second line, just go ahead and do a return there. Not a soft return, but a regular return. And sometimes the score will press right up against the name. So we'll just go ahead and get rid of that first one and then pull in a second one there and just kind of space it out away from the names. And one last thing with the box scores. Some of these players, obviously, they're like international. They're not from the United States or Canada or anywhere. They're from countries like Croatia or something like that. So they'll have like weird accents in their names, like Jan Greguch, for example. This is supposed to be an A. This is supposed to be an S. So sometimes you'll have to like Google the lineups and like how to spell their name if they're having these weird accents in their names. We don't care about the accents. Just spell it as you would normally in regular English. For the PGA and LPGA Tour, this one's pretty simple. So you just go into tabs. And you want to grab the medium box unless names are getting to the point where they have to be initialized, or if there's like two courses where they'll split those courses up to like SS or SP and all that other stuff. So on this first tab, go to your leader and just hit the period and then click off. So it should give you this dotted line leader for the first one. And like I said, sometimes they'll have like too long of a name on the first or second round. So you just want to use like M Hughes or something like that. Try not to do that for the winner of the tournament. Like Bryson DeChambeau is a bad example of this, where he'll be like, sometimes he'll win a tournament and all that, and you'll just want to try and use a full name for the winner of the tournament. If that happens to be the case, grab the short or the small glance for that. So it'll be SML for that if you run into that kind of trouble. Otherwise, grab the medium glance, which will show the score line and the regular score overall. With tennis, try to just center the ATP Tour and the WTA Tour. Otherwise, it should be fairly simple and straightforward. And the only ones that we really want to try and pull in for tennis are majors. So we're not going to care about really most tournaments that aren't majors. And the majors are the Australian Open, the Wimbledon tournament, US Open, the French Open, and the ATP Tour finals and the WTA Tour finals. When those are, I'm not certain on that, but I do try to keep a good record on that. So if you're not sure when those tournaments are, you can go ahead and just search those for those dates. But I know, I believe the Australian Open is usually in February, and I believe that Wimbledon is in March. But other than that, those are the only ones who really want to try to get in as majors. Auto racing, grab the NASCAR Cup Series only. And if a paper specifically wants like the Xfinity Series or the NASCAR Truck Series, you'll have to pull those in individually for those papers because we're not going to put those in the corporate scoreboard. The only one we're going to be using is the NASCAR Cup Series, both the lineup and the results. The results usually run on Sundays unless they have to postpone a race to Monday or Tuesday or whatever. But usually you can also grab the lineup on Thursdays, I believe. Thursdays or Fridays, whichever they have the qualifying rounds. But other than that, they should be pretty straightforward and simple to get those in. You won't have to alter any of the tabs or anything. And the last one here is transactions. This is a straightforward one. Just pull it in and paste it on there. Change the date. I know I've been guilty of this too, to where sometimes we forget to change the day. That should be one of the first things you do if you open up a scoreboard page. Even if you're not working on the scoreboard, if you pull it up and you happen to notice that day's wrong, go ahead and change it and let the page designer who's working on scoreboard know that that date is wrong. Because I know I've been guilty of that myself. I've tried to handle that, but you know, it's one of those things that just kind of you can tend to get busy and kind of forget it, but whatever. It'll have yes.
Does it pull in the wrong date, or why is the date wrong? Is that just how it is?
It's just how it is. We manually edit that. The agate itself doesn't have the date on there. That's something we fix ourselves. So you'll have like baseball, football, basketball, and hockey. Those are the only transactions that usually run on these. And sometimes you'll run into an instance where like you'll have basketball and then hockey, and then there's no basketball transactions. What you want to do is you just want to delete the basketball one. If there's no transactions for sport, go ahead and get rid of the line where it's supposed to be. And that should be everything for the scoreboard. Does anybody have any questions?
Boom. I do right off the bat. Me first.
Okay.
I have to say that I'm so glad this is recorded because I feel like this is a really great record to have of just you going over how to fix the scoreboard and just make it look the way that it does. Like, I'm a little bit blown away. But what I really would like to see, if you wouldn't mind, is maybe taking a step back and actually explaining what the glance is, what the scores are, and like how you know how much you're supposed to be grabbing, and kind of like those terms, and actually showing for each sport, if you could.
Sure.
Tanner, will you pull one in from like the wire so they can see like that we have to go off of the page and pull it in, and
Right.
Don't get too much in the weeds, but you know what I'm talking about, just so they can see that you're pulling it in.
Sure.
Thanks.
Let's see. I'll grab BKC glance. So this will be the Big Ten glance for the men's side of things. So you pull that off onto here, and this is what it'll look like. You'll have all these different conferences, and a lot of them don't really care. So just go ahead and delete until you get to the Big Ten glance, the Big East, Big Sky, Big South, and usually you'll be under Big South. So you just go ahead and highlight this part. And if it's already on the page and it looks like it's already been formatted, you can just use your eyedropper tool and paste it on that way. But if it's not formatted correctly, what you can do is you can just copy this entire glance and just paste it on here. Just for demonstrative purposes, I'll go ahead and line this up with that agate. Hit Control-Shift-T, and then you'll just want to space these out using these right adjusted tabs for the win, loss, and percentage. There, a little bit more. Sometimes you just kind of have to eyeball it a little bit, like make sure everything looks as close to good as it can be. Like it just should look readable to the viewer. Let's see. Aaron had a question, I believe. You have no idea about the names. Is there a list of what they should be adjusted to? You just blew my mind with all the team and player names that you just adjusted. I believe that is in reference to Major League Soccer. Yes, I already know I'm presenting to everyone. Thank you. Let's see. So, yeah, with this should be what it should be on the score line. So Nashville SC, LA Galaxy, FC Dallas. What you see on the glance here or in the standings area, that's what should be on the score lines here. Because we don't want to like get too complicated with like Portland Timbers, just say Portland. San Jose Earthquakes, just say San Jose. Seattle Sounders FC, Seattle FC. So it should say what it's already on the standings. And if it doesn't, just go ahead and fix that on here. New York Red Bulls and NY Red Bulls, those can be interchangeable. Just make sure that these fit on one line. So we don't want to have like score lines on two different lines because that looks sloppy and messy and not great to the eye. So as long as it fits on one line, it's fine.
What do you do when it doesn't? Because I feel like I've ran across that just a few times, and it might just be with something. I believe it was for Duluth, just on their agate page, because there's so many of those like prep summaries where their local stuff, their names are just so long. And I had the space, so I will admit I broke it into 2 lines. I did it.
It's fine. Duluth and I believe Wilmar, you can't pull that agate in as it is. You do have to do some more adjusting for those publications. Why, I'm not sure. But it is just a little bit of another hurdle that we have to clear at the moment with Duluth and Wilmar and whatnot. So that's one thing that isn't uniform, I guess, with what should be on here. Like if you pull this onto a forum page or a Grand Forks page, this is going to look how it is. But with Duluth and Wilmar, I'm not sure what it is about those pages, but they'll have a little bit of weird time with those tabs, and you'll have to readjust those for those publications specifically.
Yeah, it just depends on where something prints. So some are wider than others, which makes the columns smaller. So this we can't, since we have one scoreboard, there's going to be some papers where it's not the same column width. So that's where we run into that problem.
Anybody else? Anybody else with any questions?
Shoulder glance and what the
right.
glance is and all that stuff.
Okay, so glance. Usually let's use the NFL for example. NFL glance, this entire thing is the glance. All of this is the glance, and it'll be on the agate folder as NFL glance and NBA glance and NHL glance and MLS glance. So what the glance is exactly is it's the standings, it's the scores, and the schedule. So this is the standings, this is the score, this is the score, and then this is the schedule. In some publications, they'll want like only specific days of those. And Michael just shared the folder for the national agate, so that's handy to have. Yes, so like Grand Forks, for example, they'll want only like Sunday schedule and like Saturday scores, or Thursday scores and Friday games. Sometimes like they'll ask for specific stuff. And sometimes that's not going to be on the glance itself in the scoreboard for that day. So you'll just have to either tell the editor it's like it's not on here, or you can manually type all that stuff in by using Google and just searching for NHL, MLB, NFL. And if you search NFL, MLB, NBA individually, it should give you the scores and the schedule for those different games. That if you need to get them in manually, that's the way to do that.
Sweet, thank you.
Yeah.
Is there some way, because all that you just said like blew my mind, how you know all that stuff to do, and thank God, thank you for doing all that, and that we don't all have to do that and know that all the time. But is there something that you can like, type out, kind of just more bullet points, like, I don't know, just generalizing or stuff, what you just said, like for each sport and everything, because each one has kind of different kinks here and everything?
It's funny you mention that because I've already done that.
Oh,
It's in the, yeah, some of it is there, but it's also on, I believe, the designer homepage. So if you go to the designer homepage, there should be a style guide there somewhere.
I know there is, just to kind of put it out there. I know we have a couple of guides that Tanner himself put together with a lot of this information, but if you review that and you're watching this video and you still have questions, please let us know, because if we need something else or added or more detail, I think we can definitely make that happen.
And I'm always happy to help out with the scoreboard stuff. If anybody has any questions that they think of like 10 minutes later or a couple of days later, you're always welcome to message me on Slack on my working days. So that'd be like Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays.
thank you.
Okay, and I guess I will stop presenting. There we go.
There's some stuff on the side of the actual scoreboard file too that tells you all the stuff that you need to pull in, and kind of what type of stuff we're interested in, if you need the long or the small file size that's listed. So if anybody ever has to jump in and do it, we do at least have a list of what we're looking for, and all of the styles and stuff are already on there from previous ones.
And I'll just kind of wrap up saying that while it is good to have sports knowledge to do the scoreboard, you don't need to have knowledge of any sport to really do this, because hopefully this meeting will help those who don't know a whole lot about sports get a better taste of like what to do for the scoreboard if it's assigned to them. And there's also that information on the side of the scoreboard that will help out tremendously.
Thank you. I can't say it enough either. I'm so glad this is recorded. This is huge game changer. Well, thank you so much for presenting all of that, Tanner. Really appreciate it. Some good stuff. Okay, so this is the first time I'm actually having you guys do a weekly poll. So I'm gonna put that in there now. And this poll is going to be about whether or not the daily lineup email that is sent out to you with our lineup for the day usually says who's off that day, or if any special notes or deadlines, if that information is useful to you. Kind of want to get a yes or no from each of you and go from there. Actually, Michael, would you go ahead and figure out how to do that?
I have no idea how to do that. Yep, 1 second.
While Michael figures that out, I'm going to start going over the style guide feature and the couple topics we need to address. Thanks, Michael.
I'll do my best to try to figure it out. Hold on.
If not, we'll do maybe a form, afterwards. We can always email that out too, but we'll give that a try. Okay. So the style guide feature we're going to go over today is jump lines. Pretty straightforward, but there's quite a few bullet points, that we're going to go over about this today. So I'm going to dive in. Obviously, your jump lines are related to the stories that are jumping from your cover to inside pages. Once in a while, we will see an inside page jump to another inside page. This should not happen unless requested by the editor. Usually for like features stories, the only one I can think of at the moment was, I know Angela will be familiar with this because she took care of it quite a bit, was Grand Forks had, I forget what it was called, but they had a feature in all the jumps went to one page, and sometimes they needed 2 pages. So they were jumping from inside to inside. A story may also jump to more than one page, and in that situation, from A1 to A6 to A7, if that happens, just make sure you're using a jump line each time, that you're not, just because they're on facing pages or not, we want to make sure that for readability in the paper that the reader knows where to go. Make sure you're using the actual jump to and from items directly from the Universal Library. Make sure you are breaking jumps at a paragraph as often as possible. If not, the next one would be to end at a sentence. And if that's not possible, if you have to break it mid-sentence, just make sure you're not breaking in the middle of a word. Jumps go to the bottom of the page when they're placed on inside pages. And with that, a larger jump, if there's more than one. Thank you, Angela. The Best Birds Project was what the Grand Forks Project was for that. On the pages that have all jumps, the largest jump goes at the bottom and the smaller at top. Excuse me. Folios for jump pages. These are pretty straightforward. You know, we're already mostly doing this. I haven't seen very many issues with this myself. Those should read news, regardless if there is other content that is not related to that jump on there. So maybe they have a jump from A1 and they filled the top of the page with an outdoor story. That doesn't matter. It's still called news. Check the budget also for the page folio name. I think we run across this very, very much. In a perfect world, they're supposed to be requesting through the Layout Center to have those page folios updated. Say, for example, they submit their layout and the page is called news, but they change their mind and they would like it to be their Northland Outdoors page. So usually we're the ones that are reaching out to the Layout Center. That has been working really well lately, so we're just kind of not going to break it. It's working. So just make sure that if it's not noted on the budget for any reason, you're reaching out to the editor. Exception for a page being labeled news, I believe the forum has their back page called the back page. If a page is shared with obituaries or records and it's not the first obituary page or the first for the record page, so this is usually just, excuse me, there is jumps coming from A1 to an obituary page, or there's jumps from A1 going to a for the record page. News does come first, technically, in that folio name. So it would be news plus obituaries or news plus for the record. Now, if you run into a situation where it was just the obits page and you had to put a small jump on there and it was the only obituaries page, there are some locations that have just the one large folio, and that is good to use. On pages where an entire jump, it fills the page that you jump to, you can take this opportunity and you can change the folio name to something maybe that goes along with your story. That's more, that's more related. If it's so, it could be changed from news to, I don't know, maybe they're doing something about community and it was, and it's local, obviously. So maybe you just put community semicolon, whatever the event was, or maybe it was an event name, something on that line. Placing jumps on the page with a related story. So this situation would be if you have your jump at the bottom of the page like you would, and then the story that goes with it across the top is related, just make sure that you're using the the dotted line that's already in our FCC library. All pretty straightforward stuff. Okay, now we got a couple of topics to address with everybody, a couple announcements. Lately, we've been seeing a lot of text that is really close to the ads, and something to do with that, or the nice thing about it, is that ads come in on the template already with a text wrap around it. So to help with that, make sure you're sending your text for your body copy to the back, so then it automatically will bump against that text wrap that is applied to ads. It's really important because I think this really puts us in a bad situation that we don't want to be in, of potentially having text, come over the top of an ad. And also related to that, make sure you're paying attention just to spacing in general. There's been a couple situations where the text or the header or a label has been too close to the folio at the top of the page. So just something to be aware of as you work on your pages. Editor's notes. And I think it's just worth mentioning to all of you since we recently went live with our error reports, our error forms, and a lot of you are getting dinged with that editor's note. So I really wanted to stress, make sure you are using the item that exists in the FCC library, and they always come before the byline. Couple times here recently, Alexandria's page 2, the weather, that always goes on the left side, and there is a note on that master noting that that item does live on the left side of the page. So please make sure that you are moving that to the left side of the page. In this situation, the master template has Wednesdays on the left and Fridays on the right. This was something that we voted on a long time ago, that we thought it best just to have them both on the template and move the one over. If anyone feels differently about that, please let me know. But for now, both of them live on the template, and the one on Fridays needs to be moved over to the left side of the page when you remove Wednesdays from the template. Related to that, anything noted on master pages like that will be counted as items in the library in terms of quality control. So if you're not following something on a budget, or if you're not using an item that's in the library, those are considered half points. This will also be considered a half point, is when a master page that has clear notes is not being followed. How to format analysis text. The analysis text, it says in our style guide, that it does get the feature. It is a light headline with a drop cap, but make sure you're not leaving the word analysis in the headline. That gets pulled out and is applied with the label text above it. And lastly, column SIGs. I think I've brought this up a few times, but make sure we are going through and updating those. So if we don't have a color option, if we have a photo where it's really poor or their face is being cut off at the forehead, if you guys see those in the folder, you can forward the Google Doc in an email. Like when you go to download as a rich text file, you can send as an email, quick and easy, and you can just send that to the hub managers or even myself or your team leader, so we can get those updated in the library, because obviously we want them all to be black and white, and some of those photos are just really poor. So we want to make sure that we know when you guys come across that, so we can get it changed. If you happen to forget, you can also use the change request form and submit one of those, just letting us know to update that SIG. That is all I have. Michael, do you have anything to add? Joe, do you have anything to add?
I think you covered everything that I had recently brought up. I figured out how to do the poll, but it's got to be done by the host, so I can't do it.
Okay, how?
If you go to the little triangle, the triangle and the square and the circle, and then click on polls, it says your host can post questions here. So you should be. I can't do it though. I'm not the host.
Your host can post questions here.
You're not the host either?
I guess not.
Okay, well there you go.
Alicia, because it's her meeting on the calendar.
Okay.
Rude, or not allowed. I'll send out an email with a form. You guys will love it. It'll be the same thing. Not as exciting as the instant gratification we would get today, but it'll be fine. Does anyone have any questions about anything we went over? I know we went over a lot today. Could we do this all over again? My internet was a little rocky, Joe said. No, you're going to have to watch the meeting video after.
Who wants to get us on the scoreboard tonight?
Again.
I mean, I wouldn't mind going over again.
Yeah, I love scoreboard stuff. I'm ready.
Well, I gotta say, it blew my mind how you just know what you know, because I am not a sports person. I mean, don't get me wrong, I played softball, played basketball in school, but just like the stuff you know about agate, holy smoke. You just rattle it off. Boop. Like, it's no big deal. Goodness.
It's a lifetime, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Do it twice a week, you get to know pretty quick.
All right. Well, if no one has any questions, obviously you can always feel free to reach out to us after the fact and we'll get your questions answered. I hope you all have a good rest of your day. See you
Thanks,
later.
Tanner.